Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Babers. Pleased to be joined by my good friend and now co-worker here at On Texas Football, the one and only Jeff Howe. And on Football Theory today, we'll get into really kind of something that Bill Walsh, I think, really popularized is the impact of explosive plays and how explosive plays can really end up being kind of the great eraser of a lot of mistakes and inefficiencies on offense. And that was definitely the case for Texas in 2024. So we'll talk about that and break that down. But before we do, let's thank our fantastic sponsor, the accomplished Austin Realtor Laura Baker. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin Realtor Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. Who have any concerns or questions about real estate in the Austin area, please give her a shout today at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or you can visit her, send her an email at laura@andyallenteam.com. That's laura@andyallenteam.com. Thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. All right, let's get to it because and I've seen this before. A shout out to, I'm sure you know, Stats War. He throws out great stats. He's a data scientist that does college football analysis. And he's thrown out the 12% rule before. And for those who don't know what the 12% rule is, essentially it is a old coach's rule that they look at, trying to look at efficiency on offense and really try to decrease self-inflicted wounds on offense, right? Critical errors and mistakes. So essentially, they look at penalties, negative plays, turnover, space tackles for loss and sacks, or sacks, turnovers, and drops. Right, are the four main categories that they look at there. And apparently, they try to keep that, and they divide that number, that total number of penalties, negative plays, turnovers, and drops, and divide that by the total number of plays, and then they try to look at where they think the average should be, and 12% is somewhere around where they look at it, right? That should be where that's their goal, right? It's 12%. So I mean, and I wasn't doing this for everyone, but I did see from Sports Info Solutions. Apparently, there was a breakdown of this among the power teams, and I'll save you I won't give you all of the teams, but I'll just give you Texas, and we can start the discussion. They had Texas as the third worst team among the power teams, and they had them, third worst with the third highest rate among those, I guess, critical errors on offense. The rate of critical errors among your plays with drops, penalties, negative plays, turnovers or sacks. All right, thrown in there as well, and turnovers. And I went and looked at it, Jeff, and I was like, Texas. I didn't realize it either. We complain about it, but to kind of see it there, obviously laid out before you analytically, is still a bit shocking. They were 129th, and now they played a lot of games, played 16 games, all right? Keep that in mind. 129th, though, in turnovers with 26 of them. They were 100. If you look at sacks per game, they were 88th in sacks allowed per game. They were 121st in tackles for loss allowed per game. I went and looked at drops, and they had 29 drops. Drops weren't crazy, but they did have 29 drops. And the penalties, I believe, on offense, based on Pro Football Focus numbers, I counted 71 penalties, 6 of them offsetting, so ended up being 65, I guess, if you want to kind of look at it there. That they are, I mean, that's a lot of penalties per game. They're at 85th in the country in penalties per game, 6.4. And 4.5 of those came on offense per game. They were a sloppy offense, actually.
Yeah.
It was a sloppy offense, but the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size, but they were first in explosive plays of 20-plus yards. They were top 5 in 30-plus yard gains, and they were top 5 in 10-plus yard gains. And really, like Bill Walsh once said, that's really the saving grace for this Texas offense, because in a lot of other ways, they were critically flawed.
Yeah. It's interesting, Rod. To me, when I look at this 2-year run for Texas, I compare it to 08-09. And I think the teams on the front end and the teams on the back end are really similar. And if you go back and look at the numbers, it'll even out. It'll match up. the 2023 team, like the 2008 team, was real buttoned up. They didn't beat themselves. You can look at some instances where, okay, penalties might have been out of hand or you had a flub here or there, but by and large, they're pretty buttoned up across the board. Offense was efficient, defense was efficient, special teams was really good in 23. And then last year, they were elite on defense, just like that 2009 defense was elite. But just like the 09 team, the 2024 Texas team, they turned the ball over a lot. They didn't finish drives. Special teams. I don't know if you remember, Rod, that 2009, kind of like this year, it was feast or famine on special teams. For every DJ Monroe kickoff return for a touchdown, you had Justin Tucker trying to fake a punt out of his own end zone. Like, it's just didn't match up, right? So, but that offense was more explosive. And Jordan Shipley, Golden Tate's still walking around with a Bolitnikoff award that belongs to Jordan Shipley, by the way.
I agree with that. Yes. Amen, brother. Amen.
So that was Jordan Shipley's breakout year. Colt was more explosive, but Colt also had more turnovers in 09 than he did in 08. So I think a lot of those things match up. And I think for Texas, the more I think about it, like we talked last week, Rod, about Sark's play calling and, how, him admitting that he needs to adjust to a longer season and, plan accordingly from now on. But this is the kind of stuff where this is when you see downtrodden Sark on the sidelines where he's in the crouch position, just his head's hanging because you can have the perfect play call, but, if a false start penalty takes you from 3rd and 2 to 3rd and 7, completely changes your play call. If everything is done right and the receiver drops the ball, it really just makes you want to go drink drain cleaner. So there was a lot of stuff that was once Sark made the call that was just out of his control. So I agree with you 100%. And that look, special teams in Texas this last year, we talked about Jeff Banks. Special teams has been like the one thing you can count on through 21, 22, and 23. And you just couldn't count on it at all last year. It was completely unreliable. So yeah, it's almost, it makes you appreciate two things. One, how talented this team was to overcome its deficiencies. And two, how really freaking good Texas was on defense last year. Because as bad as the offense was in the red zone, Rod, the explosive plays helped you extend drives to where you can have a double-digit play drive. And at some point, you're like, you know what? We can go for it on 4th down in the red area close to the goal line, because if we don't score, good luck trying to drive the ball 97 yards on this defense, because you can't. You're not going to do it.
That's true. Yeah, you can roll the dice because you're like, listen, your chances of you being able to drive the field and drive the length of the field to score on our defense, you can't do it. Now, we've seen the offense put them in some compromising situations, right? Like in the Georgia game with short fields. But you're right. I mean, that defense was stellar. That's part of the reason why Texas having so many turnovers didn't hurt, Texas really, because teams couldn't score off turnovers. They couldn't score off those turnovers because the defense was so stellar. But no, it is. It's interesting to look at that this team is almost a case study in, Bill Walsh. It was for those who are unfamiliar, and I'm still looking for a good copy of the book, Finding the Winning Edge. In this book, that's where Bill Walsh wrote famously, explosive plays, I believe, are the most important, explosive play margin, it's the most important stat for him other than turnover margin, which obviously is the number one stat in football. And he claimed, based on his research, the late great Bill Walsh, that teams that had a 2 or more explosive play advantage in the explosive play margin won the game 80% of the time. If you won the explosive play margin by 2 or more plays. I think if it was by 1 play and it was like 65 or something, he broke down the stats. But anyway, Texas is the prime example of that. They really are. Because, like I said, you brought up red zone, bad field goal kicking. What, 114th or something like that? 114th in field goal percentage. So you were bad field goal kicking. You were bad in the red zone. You turned the ball over a ton, all right, 129th in the country. You gave up a lot of sacks, gave up a lot of tackles for loss, and still it limited you, all right, from winning the SEC or from ultimately getting to a national title game, but it is still amazing. I think they should study this offense. It's amazing that they were able to achieve what they achieved. Now, so I'm not giving them props for the mistakes they made. My point is this: the offense next season, if they just can avoid the sloppy inefficiency in critical errors like this, in areas like this team had, in critical errors as well, right? Like just be an average to below average team in terms of turnovers, right? Don't be one of the worst teams in the country. Sacks allowed and tackles for loss. I know we say the offensive line they lost 4 starters, but like I said, even if this offensive line just doesn't allow, and it's not going to be the O-line, it's going to be the sack avoidance mostly of Arch that could lower the sack number too, and lower the loss number for you as well. And your running backs coming back healthy, that'll help that number. So it's possible that next year's offense, although may not be as explosive as last year's offense, that it may be a little bit more efficient because you'll be better in the red zone because of Arch's legs, and I think you'll avoid some of the negative plays because of his sack avoidance ability.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you said about the defense. This is maybe the best sudden change defense I've ever seen Texas play.
It's close, brother. Yeah, I'm with you. That's a great point.
But being a great sudden change defense is kind of like being a team that's great at punting. I don't want a real big sample size to prove how good you are at doing that. Because if you have a big sample size, that means your offense is turning the ball over a lot. So I don't want a big sample size on how good of a sudden change defense you are. But I think this is actually ends up being a carryover, Rod, from our conversation last week, kind of a continuance of it. And we're talking about, what do you consider to be in the margins with Texas? To me, to be a championship team, it's things like toughness. It's things like having a good play caller, having a reliable quarterback, your skill position guys. Basically, it's personnel, it's scheme, it's stuff that, hey, we've seen Texas teams that haven't had some of those things, and that's why you couldn't be a championship team even within the margins. What we're talking about now is stuff outside the margins, man. It's those little details that's what makes the difference between you being a 13-win team that was elite. You were an elite team last year to being a truly special team, to being a team with a championship. That's what we're talking about with Texas. Now, you can say, okay, playing in the Big 12, that's why Texas was a championship team in 2023 and not in 2024. I get that. You can make that argument. But the 2023 team played much cleaner football overall and much more balanced football. Because it was almost bizarro complimentary football. Like, hey, we're going to treat this turnover like a coffin corner punt, right? Like, that's how we're going to treat it, because you still got to drive 90-something yards on our defense, and you can't do it, and we'll flip the field, and we'll get another shot at it, and if we just keep getting more shots at this, at some point we're going to get it right, and we're going to put it in the end zone, we're going to win the game. So, like I said, it's not a blueprint anybody should want to, like the Texas 2024 blueprint, Rod. It's a blueprint you should not try to duplicate it. It's just, like I said, it speaks to the talent on this team. It speaks to how good you were on defense. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, you think about it, like you think about the 4th and long touchdown in the Arizona State game.
4th and 13.
Yeah. As great as that was, it shouldn't have been 4th and 13 because trophy winner at left tackle had a false start. Like, just stuff you don't foresee happening. So if you can just get out of your own way, that could make the difference between you winning the SEC, getting a first round bye, getting over the hump in that semifinal. That's the stuff we're talking about, the stuff outside the margins, those little details. And Rod, you've known me long enough. I'm a disciple of Jimmy Johnson. I firmly believe in Jimmy Johnson's teachings. And Jimmy Johnson always said his best teams, whether he was coaching at Oklahoma State, Miami, with the Cowboys, even the teams he played on at Arkansas, the best teams he was involved with were the teams that did a great job of paying attention to detail. Every single detail matters. When you think about Nick Saban football, what do you think about? You think about a buttoned-up operation, paying attention to details. Dabo Swinney at Clemson, when they've had their runs. Urban Meyer at Ohio State, when they had their runs, paying attention to details. That's the next step. I don't worry about, the obsession with winning and the passion and physicality. Sark's got all that stuff figured out, and they're building on it and, working on that culture. It's just now every little itty bitty thing matters.
Yep. No, that's a great point, bringing up 4th and 13, because that's this team in a nutshell. Yeah. Right? Game was on the line. that whole series, right? It was an incomplete pass on first down. Trey Wisner run for no gain on second down. Pass to DeAndre Moore on 3rd and 10, I believe it was. And that was a 2-yard gain. Then you got a false start on your all-world left tackle. and you're at 4th and 13, an explosive play ends up saving your season, and then winning the game with another explosive play. Like, that's this team in a nutshell. That was their superpower, and it really did show you that Bill Walsh, the late great Bill Walsh, still right to this day. Texas proving him right. Like, no, explosive plays, even turnover margin at times for Texas. I think that he said that's the only one other that mattered more than explosive play margin, and kind of that also was right for Texas. Like, that's also something that hurt Texas in those big games that we talked about, some of those big moments. All right, good stuff there. Good conversation. Let's thank our sponsor one more time, Laura Baker, accomplished Austin Realtor Laura Baker. We would appreciate her and her support. She has been the sponsor of Football Theory since I started doing it, so we appreciate her for staying on board. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So please give her a shout today. 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or reach out to her via email at laura@andyallenteam.com. That's laura@andyallenteam.com. All right. Thank you very much to Laura Baker. And thank you, Jeff, for all the expertise. I appreciate the conversation. Thanks to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP. We'll be back next week with another edition of Football Theory. For Jeff, for Matthew, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.